Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 21 of the Terror Talks. I'm your host, Jeremy, and today we are talking about the films Escape Room and Escape Room 2. Many of you should remember Escape Room as the film that came out back in 2019, I believe it was, and it starred Taylor Russell and Logan Miller were the two main people that you'll remember from that film. But you may have also noticed that there was a second one that just came out. If you recall, the first one ended in a, not necessarily a cliffhanger kind of way, but definitely set up a course for a second film. We knew pretty much by the time the first one had ended that a second one had to come at some point, and we were very, very pleased when we found out that we would be getting an Escape Room 2. I believe the original release date was supposed to be sometime back in 2020, but we know how things went last year, and so we didn't get it until this year, 2021. But either way, we are very grateful that we did receive that. So we're going to be talking about both of them, more so the second one rather than the first one, because it's been a minute since we've seen the first one. But we're still going to talk about both of them. We're going to give them both their due diligence because they are both very good films in my opinion. I really enjoyed both of them. And, you know, we're going to give them both equal opportunity here because they both deserve that much. And like I said, they were great movies. I loved both of them immensely. So first, let's talk about Escape Room. Escape Room is a 2019 American psychological horror film directed by Adam Robitel and written by Brady F. Shute and Maria Melnick. The film stars Taylor Russell, Logan Miller, Deborah Ann Wool, Jay Ellis, Tyler Labine, Nick Dodeny, and Yorick von Wageningen. I don't know how to say that name, so yeah. And it follows a group of people who are sent to navigate a series of deadly escape rooms. So, that movie was released January 4th of 2019. So yeah, it literally was the beginning of 2019. It grossed $155.7 million at the box office, definitely going over the $9 million budget. So the box office definitely covered that. The runtime of the movie is 100 minutes, and it was distributed by Sony Pictures and produced by Columbia Pictures and Original Film. Development of the film began in August 2017, and at the time it was under the title The Maze, and then the casting process commenced. Filming took place in South Africa in late 2017 through January 2018. So, let's just go through the plot. Not a whole lot to it. I mean, it's pretty simple, but we'll talk about it. 6 people from varied backgrounds are presented with a puzzle cube. Zoey, a physics student, Jason, a wealthy day trader, Ben, a stock boy, Mike, a truck driver, Amanda, an Iraq war veteran, and Danny, an escape room enthusiast. When they solve the puzzle, they are invited to take part in an escape room with a $10,000 prize. The participants arrive at an office block with no greeting, and when Ben tries to leave, the door handle falls off, revealing that the challenge has begun. They escape the first 2 rooms, a giant heating oven and a winter cabin. After finding the key, however, the rooms become fatal. Danny falls through the ice in an icy room and drowns. Amanda plummets to her death in an upside-down billiards bar where parts of the floor periodically fall into a deep shaft below. Jason shocks Mike to death to solve a puzzle in a hospital room filling up with poisonous gas, and in a room with optical illusions and strobe lights, Ben kills Jason over an antidote required to escape. Some rooms, through songs playing, coats, and hospital beds, remind the players of them being sole survivors of various disasters. Mike escaped a mine cave-in, Zoey survived a plane crash, Danny survived when his family died of carbon monoxide poisoning, Amanda survived an IED blast, Jason survived a shipwreck in frigid weather, and Ben survived a car accident where his friends died. Zoey realizes that the purpose of the game is to determine which player is the luckiest. Ben, after escaping the last room where a wall moves inward to crush him, meets the Game Master, who controls the game that the puzzle maker designed. The Game Master explains that each year they lure in players with something in common: college athletes, savants, etc. And wealthy viewers bet on the result, with the current game luring in sole survivors of previous disasters. The Game Master tries to kill Ben, but Zoey intervenes, and together they kill the Game Master. As Ben recovers, Zoey returns to the building with a detective. The police do not believe Zoey, as all evidence of the game has disappeared. They do not believe Ben either, as he was found to have drugs in his system. While looking at the graffiti on the wall, Zoey notices the words, "No Way Out," and realizes they are an anagram for Wutan Yu, suggesting the game is not over. 6 months later, Zoey meets up with Ben and shows him newspaper articles that passed off the other players' death as everyday accidents. When Ben suggests Zoey should move on, she refuses. She reveals clues to Ben that point to an unlisted building in Manhattan. Ben agrees to go with her. However, the puzzle maker is already preparing to make their flight a new deadly game of survival. So that is Escape Room, released back in 2019. I remember when I first saw this movie, I was not really sure what to think of it. It was not one that immediately I was drawn to. In fact, the only reason I watched it was somebody I knew, rented it on Redbox and was like, hey, we should definitely watch this movie, check it out. And I just was like, okay, fine, I'll buy it, let's do it. And so we rented it and watched it, and it was really, really neat. To my knowledge, at least I've never seen one. I've never seen a film that used the concept of an escape room as means of, killing people, basically. I've never really viewed an escape room as a scary thing. I've always viewed it as a fun thing, and that's one of those things that we deal with as humans, and I've talked about this on the show before, is the things that are familiar to us that tend to be a lot scarier rather than the things that are unfamiliar. Because the familiar things, you see them as safe, comforting, but then when they flip them on their head and make them diabolical, evil, a killing weapon, that's when it starts to scare you. That's when things get weird and really can put you on edge and mess you up. And so that's what I love about this film, and I love that it's an escape room that they use to torture and kill these people, because not only do the characters have to solve these typically very difficult puzzles to get out, but the audience has to as well. When you're watching it, you've got your brain kind of working with them, because as an audience member, it's like in a horror movie, you want to yell at the characters, get out, go through the closet, or don't go into the closet, or don't open that door, or run, or this, that, and the other. There's all sorts of things that you as an audience member are yelling at the screen basically when you're watching it. Now, hopefully you're not yelling that when you go to the theater, but, I guess it could happen. When I saw the second one, I actually almost let out some audible noises and yelled at the screen. So, I can't say too much. But I bit my tongue, I didn't do it. But we're talking about the first one right now. But yeah, I love that whole premise of the different puzzles that you had to solve to basically escape. What made it even deeper was that you had each of these characters having something in common with one another. And that was what was kind of interesting, and it kind of brought you were along on the journey trying to figure out, like, why these people? Why were these people all selected? And that's a question that you ask all the time when you watch a movie like this. You wonder why are they all together? And so then we find out that the whole reason they're all together is they all survived in some sort of situation. They were the lone survivor. And I love that whole, they're trying to see which one of us is the luckiest, and they're betting on it. And that, I love that kind of twist to find out at the end. We knew that obviously the people making this escape room were diabolical and evil. And, that was seen coming from the get-go. What wasn't necessarily seen coming was the fact that people were betting on it. That it was basically another form of the Hunger Games. This was another kind of Hunger Games film in some sort of twisted, strange way, because you had this higher entity that was betting on the lives of people and watching it for sport, essentially. And so I thought that was an interesting twist that they kind of threw in there at the end. It probably wasn't meant to be as much of a twist as I'm taking it as, and it's definitely not as big of a twist as what we're going to talk about in the second one. But I still kind of like that little added element of, like, oh, okay, here's why. Like, you know, you get a motive. A motive is always nice to have in these movies sometimes, because you always want to know. You want to know why are people doing what they're doing. And then the fact that we actually get to see the people who are doing this. So as I was watching it, you know, I remember thinking, are we ever actually going to, you know, see somebody survive? Is there going to be a survivor? Is everybody just going to die? Because they, you know, the movie didn't really hint that you were going to find anything out. And so when Ben meets this game master, I was like, okay, so we see who is kind of behind the curtain. We get to peek behind it and see who's in charge here. Only to find out that he's really not that much in charge. It's the puzzle master who's the real diabolical one, and we never see him. And that's who I think it's really curious as to who made the puzzle in that first one. I'm still kind of curious as to who that puzzle maker was. But, you know, we might never find that out. We probably won't ever find it out. And that's a shame, but it is what it is. You get what you get. You can't complain too much. I mean, that movie came out 2 years ago, so we live with it, and the second movie was able to carry up from that. But I do love that, you know, we got to sort of peek behind the curtain. And not only that, our main characters were able to defeat him and, you know, kill him. And so that was pretty awesome, because that doesn't happen often in this either. And so I love that the two big characters that, you know, we know of, they give us something to root for. So that's awesome. I love that. So on August 9th, 2017, it was announced that the film, then titled The Maze, had commenced casting. In January 2018, director Robital told Sci-Fi that production had wrapped and the film would be released in September 2018, before the film was delayed multiple times to an eventual early 2019 release. Brian Tyler and John Carey composed the score for the film. The soundtrack was released by Sony Music Entertainment and includes the full score and a remix of the film's main theme by Mad Sonic and Kill the Noise, used in the closing credits. Robital originally planned the film to end with one of the survivors returning home, but decided to change the ending to make the antagonists appear more menacing in anticipation of the sequel. So the director was the one who wanted the sequel, kind of. He was sort of planning one, but wasn't really sure, it seems like. It's kind of interesting, you know, because you never know when you make these movies if there's going to be a sequel, if anybody's even going to want a sequel. Sometimes they don't want a sequel. Sometimes they're like, you know what, one was good, we get it, the idea happened, and that's that. But in this case, they did want a sequel. Escape Room grossed $57 million in the US and Canada and $98.7 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $155.7 million against a production budget of $9 million. Deadline Hollywood calculated the net profit of the film to be $46.6 million when factoring together all expenses and revenues. That's pretty awesome. In the United States and Canada, the film was projected to gross $10 to $14 million from 2,717 theaters in its opening weekend. It made $7.7 million on its first day, including $2.3 million from Thursday night previews. It went on to debut to $18.2 million, surpassing expectations and finishing second behind Aquaman. The film made $8.9 million in its second weekend, dropping 51% and finishing fifth. So it did have a little bit of a drop, but it did very, very well at the box office, as we can see. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 51% based on 158 reviews and an average rating of 5.30 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "Escape Room fails to unlock much of the potential in its premise, but what's left is still tense and thrilling enough to offer a passing diversion for suspense fans." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 48 out of 100, based on 26 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audience polled by CinemaScore gave the film a grade of B on an A+ to F scale. Sandy Schaeffler from Screen Rant gave the film 2.5 out of 5 stars, writing that Escape Room is an entertainingly cheesy and surprisingly innovative B-movie, but suffers when it turns its attention to setting up future sequels. Okay, so I have to disagree on all of that, because I think that Escape Room was very, very innovative. I loved the idea. I certainly don't see it as being that low on any totem pole. I think that they hit the mark right where it needed to be hit. I think they did some really great things. I really enjoyed it. When I got to watch it, I think everything about it was right where it needed to be. You couldn't have asked for a better film. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you say. I thought the film was, I won't say ahead of its time, because obviously I guess it's kind of hard to be ahead of its time now with the current state we're in, because now we're in a very technological state, so everything's pretty technologically advanced now. But still, it's a very, very good movie. And I loved the setup for the sequel. Because when a movie is that good, and it's able to set up a sequel, that's what you want, is you want people cheering for that possibility of a sequel. And I know for a 100% fact that I was waiting for this sequel. Now, was I sitting around every day looking at the computer going, okay, when's Escape Room 2 coming out? No. But when the movie had finished and I watched it in its entirety, I was like, okay, that's going to lead to a sequel. And then I remember surfing the internet one day, and there was like a thing that said, I don't remember if it announced a sequel for this movie or if it basically was a list of all sequels that are set to come out. And Escape Room 2 was on the list. And so that got me very, very excited. And it made me very happy because I was like, this movie is deserving of a sequel. Because I feel a lot of people want to know what happened. A lot of people want to know who is this group that is in charge of the escape rooms. I mean, I can't be the only one thinking that. I mean, I guess I could be, but I don't think I am. In terms of like gore and stuff, yes, it's a horror movie. It's a psychological horror movie, so there's not really any gore in there. There's not as far as I remember, there's really not any point where you see a bunch of blood and guts and gore. The on-screen deaths are pretty tame, nothing too gruesome. One person drowns, another person, I don't remember. It's been so long since I've seen the first one. But I mean, none of the deaths are really anything that you have to be worried about. It's not a scary movie. In fact, I don't even think it had an R rating. I'm pretty sure it had a PG-13 rating. But nonetheless, it was still very good. And, maybe it's viewed as more of a movie that teenagers are going to go see, rather than, a crowded theater of adults. Maybe that's how people viewed it. But I know for me personally, I would see it. I would personally buy it, watch it again. I really enjoyed it. And I think it adds this new kind of fear. We have all these different fears in the world. Some people are afraid of sharks. Some people are afraid of clowns. Some people are afraid of bugs. Now people can be afraid of escape rooms because in all actuality, they can be a very scary thing if you don't know if you're going to get out. Now, obviously, in the real world, they can't kill you in an escape room. I guess they could, but they probably wouldn't make much money for doing that. And not to mention they'd go to jail. But, it's a new fear. It's a new thing. And I think that is fantastic. I love the premise. I love the idea. A+. In my opinion, it's A+. It was a great movie. Yeah, it had some cheesy moments, sure. But it didn't waste any time. It didn't waste any time doing anything. You were right there in the action from the get-go. Like, it did not take any time to get into it. You were ready to go as soon as the movie started. And that's what I love about it. I think that's a good movie. You don't have to waste any time with a bunch of silly exposition or disposition. You just dive right in and you're in the action. And that's what I like about a good movie. So that is Escape Room, the first film that came out in 2019. We're going to take a short little break to hear from our sponsor. And when we come back, we'll be talking about Escape Room 2, Tournament of Champions. Don't go anywhere, guys. Hey there, Terror Talk fans. Are you looking for a new way to let your voice be heard? If so, check out our friends at Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for creating your very own podcast. They offer editing tools to create your podcast, which include your audio, listener audio, unique transitions, and custom advertisements. In addition, they'll also help you distribute your podcast to other listener sources, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. With this unique app, you also have the chance to get paid for your podcast by simply placing ads for various sponsors in your videos. Best part of it all? It is 100% free. Anchor does all the work for you and makes podcasting as simple as turning on a light. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM. Whether you're new to podcasting, doing it as a hobby, or hosting a professional show, Anchor is the place for you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back on episode 21 of the Terror Talks. Before the break, we were talking about the hit film of January 2019, Escape Room. And now we're going to be talking about the sequel to that film, which was Escape Room 2, Tournament of Champions. So, when Escape Room ended, you heard us say that, we expected a sequel almost immediately. But, we didn't know if there was one in the works. We didn't know, what the plan was there. But we knew that there had to be some sort of something being planned for a sequel, because the way it all ended, there was just no way you couldn't have a sequel to it. It lended itself so nicely to, hey, there's more to the story and we're going to tell it. Because, the first one ended and the big question was what happened to Minos, I believe is what it is, Minos, the people in charge of the escape room. And so it really opened up a lot of doors as to, where did they go? Who are these people? What are these people? We knew very little from the first one. All we knew is that they were people who bet on the lives of these players in the escape room. And that was it. That's all the information we really had at the end of the day. And so when the announcement of Escape Room 2 came out, we were very, very excited to see that was going to happen, and we knew instantly that this was a film that we had to attend and we had to talk about. So we're going to talk about it right now. Escape Room Tournament of Champions, released in some markets as Escape Room No Way Out, is a 2021 American psychological horror film directed by Adam Robitel and written by Will Honley, Maria Melnick, Daniel Tuch, and Oren Uziel. A sequel to 2019's Escape Room, it stars Taylor Russell, Logan Miller, and Deborah Ann Wool reprising their roles from the first film, alongside new cast members India Moore, Holland Roden, Thomas Cockrell, and Carlito Olivero, and follows a group of 6 people trying to survive a new series of more deadly escape room. Let's talk about all of that, shall we? So the film was produced by Columbia Pictures and Original Film again. It was distributed by Sony Pictures, and it was released on July 1st, 2021 over in Australia, and July 16th, 2021 here in the United States. The film's runtime is 88 minutes. It was on a budget of $15 million, and it grossed about $32.7 million at the box office. So they were able to basically pay that budget back. So that's really great. After the first film became a surprise hit in 2019, Columbia Pictures approved a sequel. Robitel returned as the director, with Shute writing the script and Russell and Miller reprising their roles alongside the addition of new cast members. Filming took place on Cape Town, South Africa from August to September 2019. Escape Room Tournament of Champions was theatrically released in Australia on July 1st, 2021, and in the United States on July 16th by Sony Pictures Releasing. Following several delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the film has grossed $32 million and received mixed reviews from critics who praised the cast and elaborate puzzles, but noted the film's failure to improve upon its predecessor. So I'm just going to say right off the bat that I do not agree with that statement at all. I do not believe that the film failed to improve upon its predecessor. I actually thought the second one was actually better than the first one, in my humble opinion. And so I don't understand why it grossed as low as it did at the box office. I think people are being just a little bit too overly critical there. And so I think people are not giving the film its fair chance that it deserves. And another thing that's actually kind of curious is the film was finished by September 2019 in terms of filming. So they only filmed this movie over a period of 2 months, but there was still a delay in releasing the film, so that's kind of interesting. So clearly there was a lot of editing work that had to be done because, I don't really know anything about film editing, but if the film was done being filmed by September, there were still at least 3 months before we got into 2020, which was when everything shut down. But even so, everything didn't really shut down until March of 2020. So you still had basically October, November, December, January, and the better part of February to, be doing things on the film, the editing, all that stuff. So I am rather curious as to how much work had to be done on the cutting room floor to basically lead to a delay. So that's very, very interesting to me. I'm very curious. I would love to know how much editing, CGI work, all that stuff went into this film. But enough about that. Let's talk about the plot of this film. After escaping the sole survivor escape rooms orchestrated by the Minos Corporation, Zoey Davis and Ben Miller decide to confront the shadowy organization after finding coordinates to its New York City-based headquarters. Zoey is encouraged by her therapist to move on from her trauma and to get over her aerophobia, but she opts to drive with Ben instead of flying. The pair find the headquarters derelict and are accosted by a vagrant who steals Zoey's necklace. She and Ben give chase straight into the Q subway train. Their train car separates from the rest of the train and is redirected to a remote station, sealing Zoey, Ben, and other passengers Rachel, Brianna, Nathan, and Theo inside. As the passengers realize in horror that they are once again in Minos' deadly escape game. The train becomes electrified. Zoey and Ben learn that the others are the winners of previous escape rooms, having survived them. To escape, the group must collect subway tokens as the electrification increases. Theo is killed while the rest escape. Nathan reveals his escape room group were all priests. Brianna's were all influencers, and Rachel's consisted of people who cannot feel physical pain. The next room is a bank with a slowly closing vault and a deadly laser security system. The group manages to decipher the complex route to get around the lasers and escape with just seconds to spare. While in the room, Zoey is perplexed by frequent references to someone called Sonia and that the escape rooms have no apparent connection to the group unlike before. The next room is a postcard-like beach with more references to Sonia. They discover that the beach is covered in quicksand. Nathan sacrifices himself to save Rachel and is swallowed up by the sand. Zoey finds an alternate route out just as Brianna unlocks the intended exit. An argument on which route to take breaks out. Rachel and Ben side with Zoey. Brianna escapes through the main exit while Rachel and Ben traverse to the alternate route. Ben falls into the quicksand, seemingly killed. Zoey and Rachel make their way out through a manhole back into the city. Overjoyed at first that they're outside, they quickly realize they are still in the game when they encounter a panicked Brianna. If they don't make it out of this room, acid rain is periodically sprayed on them. The group opens a taxi to escape into, but once Zoey enters, the taxi locks Rachel and Brianna out. Zoey falls into the next room, while Rachel and Brianna succumb to the rain and die. The next room is a child's bedroom containing a diary from Sonia, revealing the rooms are based on a fun day out she had with her mother. Zoey discovers Sonia's mother is Amanda Harper, who survived her fall in her original escape room and was forced into more escape rooms for Minos after they abducted her daughter. Amanda appears and begs Zoey to become the next puzzle maker for Minos, warning that she has no choice. Ben is revealed to be trapped in a cage. When Zoey refuses Minos' demand, Ben's cage starts filling with water, but Zoey and Amanda work together to free him. They manage to break out, fleeing the facility. They report their findings to the police, who retrieve the bodies of Rachel, Brianna, Nathan, and Theo. The news about Minos goes public. An FBI agent assures Zoey that Minos will be tracked down. Filled with confidence, Zoey decides to take a plane home with Ben. On board, she realizes her therapist was in on it and that the plane is another escape room. The game master mocks Zoey for falling into their latest trap as the plane begins to fall and sleeping gas fills the cabin. So that is Escape Room 2 Tournament of Champions. So this film definitely was one that was a little more intense, if I say so myself, than the original one, than the first one. And truth be told, I really enjoyed this one a lot better than the first one because there was a lot more to it. First off is just the puzzles. I feel like we as an audience viewer, once again, we got to kind of be involved with the puzzles and kind of, as we were watching, we got to guess sort of with the characters, like, oh, maybe this is what this puzzle means, or maybe this is what that puzzle means. So we kind of got to get involved there, and that was something that I appreciated about the first one, was that as an audience member, we got to basically kind of sit there and really hold your breath for a moment and go, oh, what's going to happen? Or are they going to survive? Are they going to die? What is the big game plan here? So I really like that we were able to experience that. So that was one major thing I really enjoyed about this film. The second thing I loved was that whole idea of bringing the characters back from the first one, or at least our two main characters. Like, if they had not shown up in it, I think that would have been really disappointing, especially given the way that the first one had ended. Like, if we didn't see Zoey and Ben again, that just would have been devastating to the film. In my opinion, I think it would have been extraordinarily devastating, and it just would not have been, as worth seeing at that point, because it really was like they made that movie, and the cliffhanger at the end, it had to do with them. It had to do with their trauma that they went through, and so you kind of have to have them. It's kind of a rule in some sick, twisted way. I don't know, but so I love that they were brought back, and I expected them to already be at the new escape room in this one. Like, that's what I was halfway expecting when the film started. But no, we actually saw that there was this struggle with Zoey, who she was afraid of flying on a plane. And apparently what happened was, like, 3 times they tried to get on the plane to go to New York to investigate this new escape room that was there, and she couldn't do it. Her aerophobia it got the better of her. And for those of you who may not remember, in the first one, this aerophobia that was her accident that she survived. Everybody in the first one had all survived a deadly accident. They were all the lone survivors. And so that is the reason for Zoey's aerophobia, is because she survived a plane crash and her mother died in it. So, like, obviously, that's enough to scar anybody. But that's where that whole thing, the whole plane thing, stems from. And I'm going to tell you a line that was said, because this stems into something very important much later. So at the very beginning of the film, Zoey is sitting there with her therapist, and they're kind of talking through everything. And her therapist was saying, look, everything you see is a clue. You're basically letting this escape room take over into the real world, and you can't do that. She's basically telling her, this is everything's a clue to you. Everything is seeping into your real life now, and that's very bad. And so she says, she holds up a pen and says, this is a clue. She holds up a book. She says, this is a clue. She says, everything is a clue. And then what she says that's very kind of interesting is she says, what would it take to get you on that plane? To which Zoey responds, the only way she would get on that plane was if she knew that the people who did this were captured, brought to justice, and basically would not hurt anybody ever again, and that she had that assurance knowing that they were gone. So pay attention to that. That's a very important thing that comes into play later. So she tells her this, and basically then we turn around and Zoey and Ben drive to New York, and on the way there we see that Ben is already haunted from the escape room because he has a nightmare of a room crushing him. Like, it's real intense. And then at that point they get to New York, and the film basically plays out from there. The action takes off immediately. They're chasing a guy into a subway, and he basically leads them into the escape room. and we're off to the races at that point. So in terms of the action, the adventure side of things, everything is ramped up in this one, and everything in this one is definitely more intense, if you will, because you know the stakes at this point in this film. You know what's at stake. You know that if you don't solve these puzzles, the characters are going to die. And that's the big intensified part of this, is we know now. We know what these people can do. It's not a mystery to us. And so when they all end up on that train together and they realize what's going on, like, you're like, okay, now we're here. We're in the game world now. It's on. And you can even see the look on the characters' faces, because they're sharing in that same sort of fear. You can tell how messed up their experiences in these escape rooms has been, because they start panicking and they're like, no, here we go, it's happening again. And so that's the intensified part of this. And in a way, it kind of literally is almost an homage to the Hunger Games. I think I said before that the first one, the whole idea of them betting on it and watching it, it was sort of a sick, twisted kind of knockoff of the Hunger Games. Well, the second one is kind of a knockoff to the Hunger Games as well, in a way. Not saying like the whole premise is a knockoff to the Hunger Games, but it's just kind of funny that in the second one it does that similar thing that the Hunger Games, not Mockingjay, Hunger Games Catching Fire did, which was, they had the quarter quell, and the victors were the ones who had to go back into the arena. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that in this second escape room film, it was the champions who ended up in this new escape room. So that was kind of a neat, maybe homage to the Hunger Games. I'm not sure if that was the intent, but still, in my opinion, very neat. I'm glad they did something like that. So I'm down with it. So, like I said, this film is a little bit more intense. Things are a little bit more scary in a way. Not like, there's no like jump scares or anything like that. But you are, getting messed with in the head a little bit, because you think somebody's going to make it out, or, you're wondering what's safe, what's real, and you're not really sure what you can trust at that point or what to believe. And I kind of like how this film does that, and they really do make it seem like, can I trust anything here? And they do a beautiful job with that, especially with all the puzzles. They're trying to figure out, well, maybe this is how we get it. No, maybe this is blah, 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 blah. They go back and forth forever and a day, and which is literally how an escape room is. But in a real escape room, the consequences are not life and death. So not quite as intense in a real escape room, but still they mimic that kind of same attitude, just without the raised stakes. But so you've got these different puzzles, you've got these different people, and I love that we kind of learn this background of all these different people. And so we've got a priest, we have somebody who couldn't feel physical pain, somebody who is like a vlogger or whatever, I guess, or had a hobby. Then, of course, you had Ben and Zoey, who are the lone survivors. And there was one more. I don't think we ever actually learned what his thing was, what his group was. They never told us, because he died before we could find that out. But so through the course of this movie, you're just kind of, it almost follows horror movie rules, because in any horror movie sequel that if you survived the first one, your chances of surviving the second one are slim to none. And so I kind of love that they take that rule and they play with it a little bit, because it really is true in a way. Like, you go and see all these different horror movies, typically once you get to the second one, there are not a lot of characters that are going to survive. So this entire movie, you're kind of just watching along, wondering when the main characters are going to die, because the only two we really have to root for at this point are Zoey and Ben. So you're just kind of sitting there going, well, when is their time coming? When are they going to essentially bite the dust? And when it finally happened for Ben, I remember literally going, no! Like, I was so upset when he died, because I was really hoping him and Zoey were going to make it out because of how far they were making it with things. I thought maybe they have a chance here. Maybe they're going to survive. But no, the film writers said, no, we're going to mess things up for you and make you even more sad. So they killed off Ben after already killing off a couple other people. They killed off the priest pretty early. They killed off the stranger. And so then they kind of put you in another room, and it's Zoey and the other two girls she's with, Brianna, and I cannot remember the other. Brianna and Rachel. Brianna, Rachel, and Zoey. And the three of them are all together, and they're solving the puzzle, and they're doing good. They're outsmarting it, and you have so much hope for them. And then, once again, they rip it right out from under you by basically saying only Zoey can survive, and they kill off Rachel and Brianna right there. And that just, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, you could tell they weren't playing around with this one. And that's when this film takes, like, such a 360 for me, and I was so, like, happy they did this, because it's very seldom you get movies that do cool things like this, but they brought in a twist, and so I love a good twist on any film, so they decided to do it. And what the twist was, so Zoey ends up in this, like it said, a nursery of sorts, a little child's nursery, and she's kind of looking in a box of all these pictures of a special day of a child with her mom, and the name is Sonia, which we keep seeing the name Sonia pop up at different parts in this escape room, but we have no idea who or what Sonia is. Well, we find a letter that is written by somebody, and it mimics something that Zoey told only her therapist that somebody who had died in the first one had said. It was something that she had told Zoey, and Zoey was saying that to her therapist. Well, as soon as I read that, I went, oh, okay, so the therapist knows. The therapist is in on this, and that's what I thought immediately. Well, then that's when they pulled another curveball on me. And in walks Amanda, the one who had, I think that's her name, Amanda, we're just going to call her Amanda. She walks in and is clearly alive. She did not die from the scene in the first one. If those of you that remember the first one, her death was in the bar type room where the pool tables were all falling out of the sky and such. So that was how she died, was she fell. Well, you can imagine Zoey was just as shocked as we were when we saw her there. And so as soon as we see her, she's like, you're dead. Why are you here? And that's literally, that was me too. I was just like, how are you here? And of course I'm in a theater full of people, so I can't physically say anything. But I literally, I put my hand on my mouth and gasped because I was just so in shock. Because I was like, no way, you're here. How did that happen? And then, lo and behold, she tells us the big secret that they never killed her. They said if you didn't see it, it didn't happen. And so we're like, wait a minute. And what you have to remember is when Ben dies earlier in the film, he falls into quicksand, and that's just all we see is him falling into quicksand. We don't know what happens beneath the quicksand. So, we don't see the death. Well, apparently back in the first movie, when Amanda fell, there was basically a hologram on the ground, and she fell through the hologram, and there was literally a, what would you call it? A parachute pad, a pad to basically keep her from hurting herself and dying. And so that pad was what saved her and let her survive. Well, apparently the way it worked was Minos had prepared all of this and made her create the new games. So the games that the champions had to go through, it was created by Amanda because Minos kidnapped her daughter. So I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then, to add insult to the injury and plot twists here, when Amanda tells her, hey, if you didn't see it, it didn't happen, we get one more surprise. A chamber opens up, and there's Ben being held hostage. So Ben didn't die. When I saw that, I was like, oh, again, in shock. It had me. I was like, are you kidding me? I could not believe myself. And so then, of course, Zoey refuses to play the game or be the new game maker. and she rips up the proposal that is given to her, and that is basically the end of that. So she rips that thing up and says, I will never design these games for you. And of course Amanda's like, no, do you realize you don't have a choice, yada yada yada. And they end up melting down the room and breaking Ben out of his water-filled casket now, because that room he's in starts filling with water and drowning him. But they are able to stop it by burning everything, because metal burns, and all of those rooms are just facades made by metal. So they escape and are able to expose the Minos Corporation and all that, and they go through everything, and everything's great and all that. And then the final twist of all comes, and this is what got me the most, but also made me happy because it sets up a third one. When she's on that plane, it's revealed that that plane is a new escape room, and that made me like overjoyed, especially with the way it ended. And I was just like, yes, maybe we're gonna get a third one now. And I remember sitting in the theater when we discovered what was going on, and we saw the therapist, and we saw the look on Zoe's face, and then we hear that voice, which is the voice of the Minos Corporation or whatever. It's basically saying, we decide when the games are over. You can't outsmart us. This is our game. And when that happened, I was like, oh yeah, like it's on now. And then the screen went to the credits, and I was just like, is that it? Is that it? And I was literally like, what? In the theater I was doing that, and there were these people in front of me who kind of looked at me like, seriously? Like nobody, I don't think anyone could believe what we got as an ending there. And so I'm really hoping that this is opening up a doorway to a third one, where hopefully we can get some sort of closure on the story. Maybe, I don't know. But so the questions that I do have to ask about this whole ending, though, is, were Ben and Amanda real? Because the whole thing about it is, at the end there, the big Minos voice asks Zoe, were we convincing enough for you? Because, she had said earlier, the only way that I will get on that plane is if I know that they're captured. And so that's what Minos did. He made everything look like him and his organization were captured, when in reality, they were not captured at all. So my big $1 million question here is, if they weren't really captured and all of this was set up by them, then who were we looking at? Was it really Ben? Was it really Amanda? Was it really the therapist? I have all these questions about who is who here, and are they real, and what's going on. Those are the big questions I have. And so I'm curious, because if they're in the business of just trying to convince her of something, then they could probably do it without having the real people there. But then at the same time, we've never really seen a fake person in this before. So there's really no telling, what really happened there. So I'm just curious. I'm very, very curious about that whole thing. But that is Escape Room 2. It was absolutely incredible. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoyed it much more than the first one even. So I'm very excited and very happy that we got to see it. Very curious if we're going to get an Escape Room 3. I really hope we do. I'm hoping that maybe negotiations are already underway. But, only time will tell. We're going to have to just kind of sit tight and hope for the best. But that is Escape Room 2. We give it about I'd say probably 8 or 9 out of 10 stars. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, about 8 or 9. It was very good. I really enjoyed it. But that is going to do it for us today on episode 21 of the Terror Talks. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, be sure to go down below and like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you want to hear. We'd love to hear from you guys. You can send us an email to theterrortalks@gmail.com, or you can contact us on any one of our social medias. And be sure to go like us on our social medias. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure to go check us out on all of our listening platforms. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and so many more. You don't want to miss it. If you want to support us a little bit more, you can go check out our Patreon. There you can subscribe to several different types of packages to receive bonus content, merch, different things, be a part of the show even. So go check that out, see what we're offering there. That is going to be the Terror Talks. Be sure to go check out our friends over at the Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. They are covering all things Universal Studios Orlando. And then you can also go check out their sister podcast, the Rush of Fear podcast. They're covering all things Halloween Horror Nights, which is something we're very, very excited about. This will be our first year attending that event. Also, go check out our friends over at the Theme Park Duo podcast. They are over on the West Coast, covering all things HHN Hollywood, Universal Studios Hollywood, Knott's Scary Farm and Knott's Berry Farm, Disneyland, and Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, as well as so many more various theme park topics. So go check them out. You don't want to miss an episode from them. And then go check out our friends over at Tales from the Crypt. They are covering all things paranormal, spooky, haunted, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, and downright creepy. You don't want to miss them. Go check them out, Tales from the Crypt. Finally, we want to thank you guys for being such loyal listeners. We hope you enjoyed yourselves, and we hope that you will tune in again with us next time on the Terror Talks. Until next time, be good to each other, don't text and drive, and be excellent to each other. Take care, guys.